Yeah, so my name is Daniel. I know some of you.
Hi, Daniel.
Met some of you. Hi, guys. I play the roles, I would say, of what I call channeler and intuitive psychologist. I won't go into all of that, but I was trained as a clinical psychologist. I worked a lot with trauma. And then through my own invitations, my own trauma, my own pain and sickness, which went on for a while, I was invited to open the channel. And someone else joining us?
Yes, one more.
Spirit says, wait, there's more.
More the merrier.
Yeah.
Come on in, Mike. Got a chair just for
Hey,
you.
it's my buddy Mike Daniker. Troublemaker extraordinaire.
Sorry.
How you doing, Mike?
No worries. Right on time.
How you doing,
Hi, Mike. I'm good.
We saved you a seat.
I'm Daniel. And so I was trained clinically as a psychologist, was doing a lot of that. As it started to heal, there was just another source of information that started to come through. It wasn't quite necessarily as clean as it feels now, but I started making different decisions. I started doing different things for my life that were more supportive, lifestyle, all kinds of things. Left my clinic, just kind of knew I was meant to start doing something a little more expansive. It was still trauma healing. It was still, working with people's pain, working whatever you want to call it, suffering, the shadows, I know a lot about the body. I know a lot about the mind. But I started to know different things about people, where it might be coming from, what they can do for their bodies, where the ancestral lineages go. I just started becoming interested in learning different things about energy medicine, about the chakra system, and it was effective for me. And then the opening kept happening, and I was talking to Alan, like, people have different ideas about what this word channeling means. To me, we're all channeling, it just depends what. Most of us are channeling our trauma. Most of us are trauma machines. We're playing out the primal survival conditioning that comes from our human ancestry that we all have, and we're playing out the conditions we've adapted to from early life. No one escapes childhood unscathed. So we're all playing out those survival mechanisms and what people would call the child self, the inner child, that part that we're not always aware of because it's painful and it would be quite dysfunctional to always be aware of it. We're playing a lot of that out in our beliefs, in the way we see ourselves, others in the world. So all the circumstances are mirrors of what those beliefs are and what we're ready to learn and to work through. So that continued to be how I was showing up, but for me, I was recognizing more and more of that trauma and recognizing more and more of that fear, which really drives the whole bus. It's pretty much all rooted in fear, the survival conditioning of the fear and the fear-based beliefs that the mind attaches to. And so if we begin to recognize that, open that through invitation, my invitations were pretty heavy. Usually it takes pretty strong invitations for us to change. There's another thing we can start channeling. We can call it a divine source. For me, it's pretty wacky. Like, I do talk about things like ET beings and other sources and archangels and whatever, but it doesn't really matter. For me now, what I pretty much say is I commune with the high self. We all have aspects of ourselves that are quote unquote higher, that are more connected to source, that love us unconditionally, that are present always. And this is what we return to, which is my personal truth. It doesn't have to be yours, but this is what we return to. This is what we ultimately become. But we can all begin to connect with that. I didn't necessarily choose it, but I chose me, and I do believe that collectively we are all invited to start awakening this. So this is what starts to happen to me, and when I step into this space, which I'm in, it's my eyes are open. I don't necessarily know what I'm going to say until I say it, but this is the process of channeling. I don't even remember what I wrote on the workshop, but whatever that is, if that got you here, that's for you to receive, potentially, if you're open to it. If it's about coming into the heart, I probably wrote something about that. That's the invitation for you. For me, the invitation is to align with this source and to let it out, and to be free, and to be loving. What I do sense, we're going to talk about a little today, and I will probably talk for, I don't know, 40, 45 minutes, maybe, we'll see. I have no idea, but then we'll just open it up for whatever you guys want to say. You can ask me questions, we can just have a conversation. But what I sense, we're going to talk about a little today, is the future. And this is not talking about the future to escape now. This is talking about the future to integrate into now. So whatever this information is information of light. I invite you to see how it feels now. What does it do to your heart now? What does it do to the fears you have about you, others, and the world now? Because there's quite a bit of that. There's quite a bit of that. But the future is bright, if you'd like it to be so. It's bright if you can see the possibilities of its brightness. And if you cannot yet see the possibilities of a bright future, I invite you to see that fear. See the mechanism of that fear that is playing out, that is tricking you over and over again into the illusion of separateness, into the idea that all of this is random and chaotic and not serving us, and despairing and whatever else. It's not to say that it's not those things. Read the news. It is those things on one level, but there's a medicine there if we allow it to teach us. If we want to be victim to the fear, we can be. And you'll play that out as long as you need, and others will play that out as long as they need. And the future won't be as bright for them until it is, because we all return to the light. It just may take some a little more time, even though time is an illusion anyway. But from our limited perspective, it will take a little more time. And for those of us who would like to choose the light, it starts by honoring the fear. Recognize that there is fear, that there is palpable fear, because we cannot escape the fear. That's not my personal brand of spirituality. It has never been possible for me. I lived with so much fear for so much of my life. And I'm still healing the layers and layers, and there's so many layers of that. But what we see, what you can see, is that some calamity, some disaster that takes place on the planet, some calamity or disaster that takes place in your own life, this is not a new fear in you. This is just a new morsel of fruit for the fear within you to attach to. It's not to say that that is not, that there is not immense sorrow and grief and tragedy. There is. It's not to make light of the circumstance. It's to invite us to see that as those of us who are here to hold the light, we do so by looking clearly at what's happening and looking clearly at the fear mechanism that is playing out within us. because they don't have to be the same. They don't have to be wired. It doesn't have to be, I watch the news, I get angry. I read the news, I get angry, I get despairing. That's just what happens. It's not so different. Today's NFL Sunday, right? Like, it's not so different from people who are diehard football fans, and they say they like this sport, and then you watch them watch the game. Half the time they're cheering, half the time they're cursing, they're like throwing the TV. It's like, but if you were to ask them, they're like, well, that's just how it goes. I'm a fan. You gotta suffer. I'm a Jets fan, you know? You just gotta suffer. It's just painful. We are choosing that. And that's probably an easier example to see that we are choosing that kind of fandom. We are choosing that kind of pain. And it feels a little messier to look at the choices we make in regard to the current state of our planet. It is still a choosing. It is still a choosing to, it's not a choosing to have the fear, because we have the fear. The fear is there. It's a choosing to be controlled by it and let it dictate how we continue to feel and how we continue to believe about the state of our lives and the state of where we are going. There is another choice, which is to see that when the fear arises, we say, thank you. I don't have to like it. I don't have to pretend, but I say, thank you. I welcome you here. This is a part of me. This is here to teach me, and you are allowed to stay for as long as you need to stay. You are allowed to stay for as long as you need to stay. And when you're ready to go, I invite you to go. Because we don't have to pretend what we would prefer. But in that way, almost ironically, when we start to get clear on the fear and we invite it to stay, what happens is we start to recognize all the things we've been doing that are triggering that fear. Because when we're so focused on pushing away and not acknowledging the fear, what happens is we're actually quite blind, so we continue to be fans of all the sports teams that make us suffer. We continue to wake up and read the news right away, and we just have this belief, I need to know what's going on. I don't feel good about it, but I need to know. And so when we're doing everything we can to push away the fear, we end up playing out all these mechanisms and circumstances that bring it right back up. The reason is because we're growing through fear. We need the fear, actually. We need the fear so we can transmute. We didn't just come here, we didn't just incarnate to be without fear. We came here to have fear so we could transmute it into light. And the only way I've ever known is through. There are some, kinds of healers or energy workers or those who will say, well, I can clear your trauma and you won't even have to experience it. You won't have to re-experience it. I'll just clear the lineage, I'll clear the past lives. I've literally never found that to be true. I've just never found it to be true personally that you can clear trauma without going through it. It doesn't mean getting stuck in it, but we allow the feelings and the beliefs to reveal themselves so we can consciously, with the conscious mind, see what we're no longer available for, what we prefer not to have. Otherwise, we get, maybe briefly, our chakras get cleared, but we're not conscious of it, so we just play out the same stuff. We play out the same fandom. We play out the same mechanisms that bring it all back. We're really here to consciously be made aware of what we're ready to transmute, what we're ready to be with, what we're ready to release. So now I'll talk a little bit about what happens when we start to do that. Consider for a moment, and maybe this is a couple thousand years away, but whatever, it starts right now. That there can be a version of Earth where there is no more pain, no more sickness, no more ailments, at some point, no more death. But just see what that information does to you. Does it light something up inside you now? Because that's not something to hang your hat on or to escape into. Just let the frequency of that be a possibility if you're open to it. And I'll say that what I'm guided to set in motion is the integration of various lineages of healing on our planet that will come together through people who are here to bridge those gaps of healing, indigenous populations of healing, Chinese medicine, yogic philosophy, Western psychology, energy medicine, to bridge these gaps to create a foundation for starting to heal the body. Because for those of us who are into, let's say, like spiritual teachers, I grew up with a father who was very interested in Buddhist philosophy, and so I was reading books by Eckhart Tolle and other kinds of teachers, and I was interested in people who appeared to be sort of enlightened beings who walked the earth. And I still believe that, but historically that has almost been, the experience has appeared to be, like Ramana Maharshi, like the experience has appeared to be the consciousness awakens, but the body is still a body, it's traumatized, but they don't really care. Ramana had cancer and he was like, what are you gonna do? It was still blissful on some level. It was pain, but bliss. But we did not have the advancements, we did not have the technology to begin actually healing the body and upgrading the physical nervous system to align with that level of consciousness. So for them, it was like, I'm not the body, whatever. Now, what I feel is that is no longer what is happening. Now, because of the advancements in trauma research and what we know about the nervous system, the invitation to ascend, if we want to call it that, different kinds of jargon that resonate for some, raise your vibrational frequency, raise your consciousness, recognize the truth of who you are, whatever, be happy. We be happy through the body. So it is through the healing of this physical and energetic body, because we have that too, but many of us don't yet see that. That will be part of the integration. But so through healing the mechanisms of fear, we heal and begin to transcend what is this primal survival conditioning of the human ancestry. What some refer to, as that primal ego that is based in the perception of separateness, of competition, of scarcity, of winning and losing, of survival. And for many species on the planet, that is the case. And for many human beings, it is still the case. The difference between us and other species is we have a mind. And I can go on a tangent about how that came to be. Namely, it wasn't just native to Earth, but we have a mind. There's no coincidence for that. And we are not, some will say, well, let's be like the trees and let's be like the animals. And on some level, there's beauty there because there's presence. But they don't have minds in the way that we have minds. So we're not gonna be the tree. We are going to awaken and ascend through the mind. And the way we do that is we begin to wake up the mind to its larger capacity, which is not only that survival conditioning. The mind has fallen into this dream that the only thing it's capable of is playing out this survival conditioning. So that's what people call the ego, right? Oh, they're so greedy, you're only looking out for yourself. It's like, well, yeah, because the mind came into this body that is based in all that stuff. But we're more than that. And so as we recognize we're more than that, we have the capacity to begin healing this fear. Because at the root of all of that ego, that limited mind belief, is the fear that we actually do just have to keep surviving and there isn't enough. And for some on the planet, it is still that game. It is. So they do not necessarily have the privilege of doing this yet. But I feel that for some, this was sort of popular in my clinical training. It was like, well, because there are others who still have to play the survival game, we should still play it too. We might as well, right? Like, I should be a burned out clinician working 60 hours a week because there are people who can't eat. So like, who am I to like start living differently? You are exactly the person to start living differently so that we can hold the light and eventually help everyone come into that place. For those of us who have the privilege, we are no longer here to live a survival-based game. We can truly transcend this primal wiring, and the way we do that is by recognizing that when the fear arises, it is not based on the new circumstance. It is not because I got a new dent in my car because someone cut me off in traffic. It's because there's more to go. There's more for me to welcome it in. And when we welcome it in, we welcome it in with love. It's the most cliche thing in the world, but love is a higher vibrational frequency. It exists when you are in love. Are you worried about survival? Are you worried about scarcity? Are you worried that there's not enough love? If it's let's say a new romantic partnership, and it's, at first the love feels so good, but the ego sneaks in, that primal wiring that says, oh, the love is in this person, so I better not lose this person. I better hang on to them, and I better do anything I can to keep this love because it's a competition and there's scarcity and there's not enough. There's only one person. If I lose them, I'm screwed. Until we start to see that, oh no, it's a capacity in me. It's a capacity. It's a frequency, just like fear. I can be in fear. No one's worried about running out of fear. No one's like, oh, I better hold on to this one person or I'll lose all my fear. No, fear is plentiful. And so is love. It's just a different frequency. But the way we get there is often by recognizing all the places that the ego or the survival wiring has attached to attempt to get it from. Because often, at least at this point in our collective time, spirit, universe, God, whatever you'd like to use, some greater universal will or intelligence, as I see it, invites us to find love by showing us all the places we can't actually get it. It invites us to see it inside by showing us time and time again that those other things, they just don't last. Relationships are beautiful. Sex is wonderful. Food, whatever you'd like, travel, all these things, people, places, and things, it's beautiful. It's not to be dismissive of it. It's not to you don't have to be an ascetic and go off into the woods. We can have these things, but until we recognize that we're not really getting love from the things, we're gonna keep suffering because those things are only matching the capacity within us. Sex, for example, can be a vessel for love, but it certainly isn't always, because it's not giving you love. That is only a medium to express love if it's already an open capacity within you. If it's not, it's going to play out other things. And sensual pleasure is great, but it's not the highest form of pleasure. It's kind of lower on the chakra totem pole. Again, it's not to be shamed or be dismissive of, but if we find ourselves continuously chasing the highest experience is physical, that kind of physical pleasure, so I'm going to do everything to get it, probably not gonna work out because it's limited and it's not our highest truth. There is a greater pleasure, a greater feeling, which is another form of love, which is truly this capacity and recognition that we are the allness, that all of this is a reflection of us. And that does start to bring us into language that is it's a little off-putting, understandably, because when you hear something like, oh, we are the allness, it's like, okay, yeah, like I kind of get it, but I don't like feel it. Like what does that mean? I'm in this body, I'm not like in that body, right? So I think a more accessible way to say it is like, we all come from a source, and we did come to play out these individual games. Like I came here to be in this body. I didn't come here to be like all the bodies. I came here to express the fullest possible freedom and expression of this thing. So that's literally what I'm doing right now. I'm just expressing the fullest possibility of this thing. And that's what all of us are invited to do. We really are here now to be the fullest expression of our individuality. Recognizing that may, you don't even have to believe it, but recognizing that at some level that may not be the fullest expression of who we are. That we may not only be this individual expression. And as we continue to express individually to the fullest expression, what may happen to bring us back to that future of light is that those who are willing to work with the fear, those who are willing to begin transmuting that fear and choosing through invitation and surrender, not really through force, that's a different game. That's more of that ego game. Well, I'll make it happen. I'll make love happen. I'll make expansion happen. Good luck. I don't really know how it works. I only know surrender. That's the only way I've been able to grow, is through surrendering into abundance, surrendering into love. I don't know how else to make things happen. I was never that way. Some people are really good at like building companies and like, making lots of money. That was never my way. My brain doesn't work like that. It only knew kind of emotions and surrender. But the good part about that is you don't have to make your fullest expression happen. You don't have to make your individuality happen. What's likely is that all the things you've been making happen are not your true nature, because your true nature doesn't take work. Like your true nature doesn't need to be figured out. It just happens when we stop trying to make everything else happen. And so what will likely happen is that as we continue to honor and own that fullest expression outside of fear, sometimes alongside fear, it doesn't mean that like we make choices only when there's no fear. It's we recognize, okay, there's fear, but this discernment compass, where there's also other good feelings, there's like excitement. There's like a possibility of like, oh, I could be this. I could like actually do this. Like this could be possible. There's also that. And so everyone kind of navigates this for themselves. But when there is that feeling alongside the fear, we leap anyway. We leap anyway, or we just take steps, or we let other things fall away that were controlled more by fear, that didn't have any excitement attached. Like many people's jobs, frankly. There's not any sense of excitement left. Maybe there was initially, but it's like only fear now. It's like, well, we'll run out of money, etc. If we start to pursue or align more with the other parts of that compass, we will start to align collectively with other people who are being the fullest expressions of themselves. And we will align in what we can call community based on these free beings, leaders of their own heart, not communities that are following like one, guru on top, but like communities full of leaders unto themselves. And we are leaders unto ourselves when we pursue what is lighting us up in that heart space. That's how we get there. We're no longer attaching our fear to some. I love different spiritual modalities. Like I explore a lot. I explore a lot of frames, astrology, human design, whatever. I'm into it. But if it's there only to try to keep us safe, if it's there only to try to like hold the fear, it's never going to, again, fill us up in the way we really want. It's never going to teach us all about ourselves. Nothing's going to teach us all about ourselves except ourselves. It's just through experience. It's just through stepping into this thing and continuing to open and go forth. That's how we learn. And then typically the things that come in, if it's a framework, if it's astrology, if it's an astrologer or someone else, a therapist or whatever, it's aligning with that intention, which is, I don't necessarily need this person, but they can support this thing. That's just like opening, and we can say it's in communion with Source. We can say it's guided by Spirit, whatever we want. We can say it's just guided by our own heart. But we can say for sure it's no longer primarily guided by fear. Because that's the thing that's just going to keep us in a different vision, a different so-called future, a different path. And it's always going to be available. And it's probably just going to get more and more available. There's going to be, now let's be scared of AI, or let's be scared of the sun exploding, or let's be scared of there's always going to be an opportunity. Cars are going to become conscious and just take everyone. And and the thing is, like, if it's your belief, it could be a possibility. We live in infinite possibilities. So it could be a possibility. But like, is that possibility exciting to you, or is it driven by fear? And if we continue to live driven by that fear, that will create the reality that we live in for that time being. For those of us who are ready, we may continue to be invited to step outside the fear and to align with a higher truth. But until we are ready, we will be tasked with practicing holding a higher belief, a higher possibility, a higher truth, while we visit the fear, and because it's a part of us. So we don't just get to like take plant medicines and like blast off into spirit, because we're in this thing, and this thing has fear in it. So it's a practice of holding the perspective while we visit all of those, because that's it's a continued invitation. Every news article, every circumstance, it's not to play this game of like, that's real news, that's fake news. It's not about that. It can all be real if you want it to be. It's just that, is it an invitation to keep you controlled by the fear, or an invitation for you to recognize the fear within you and practice loving it, welcoming it home? Because this is no different. Welcoming that child of fear home, is the same way we welcome every other being on this planet home. Because they're all children of spirit too. Some of them are playing Oscar-worthy performances as some really off-putting characters. And they're doing great. They're really nailing it. But they're still children of spirit. They are. All darkness comes, shadow comes from the light too. It doesn't mean you have to like it, just like you don't have to like the fear. But they're really here to be welcomed home. That's the only way they get home. It's through welcome, invitation. No one gets home through force. No one gets home through punishment, including our own fear. We can beat ourselves up for it all we want, but we don't transmute it that way. It doesn't go away. And so we can get into the conflict. And if it lights you up to be in a certain form of advocacy, and to really go into that darkness and to go into those environments and to be there, then do that. Just continue to remember, if you're open to it, that your own emotional state is what is being put out. So if you're in there in fear saying, this needs to change, this needs to change, this needs to change, and I won't be happy until it changes, it's your own box, your own imprisonment, your own future you're creating, while you, with the best of intentions, want to serve the suffering. If we can practice holding the light and recognizing that no one creates my emotions except me. No one creates my emotions except me, and no one else can welcome my fear home except for me. It doesn't matter what changes. It doesn't matter if it starts to be politics we like. It doesn't matter if suddenly, it doesn't even matter if the earth starts to heal, if global warming reverses. None of that is going to welcome your fear home until you're ready to. Because if that starts to happen, you'll just worry about something else. It's how it's always been. So we have to be those leaders. We have to be the change. And when we do that, and we're working with and getting free of the shame and the fear, we actually just get to be the highest expression of ourselves. And we actually just realize that, like, to be a good person, we don't necessarily have to be a certain kind of thing. I used to be a teacher on the south side of Chicago, and frankly, that sucked for me. And like, I could not be my highest light in that place. I just couldn't. It wasn't, but we can say, I'm probably just a terrible person. I have all these privileges, and I'm just like not resonating enough to like be an effective person of service. All of that could be true, but it could also be true that, like, I'm still worthy of being a good person. I just need to find my lane, find my truest expression, find all of who I am. And that really allows us to get free enough to pursue our creatorship, our artistry. Maybe our greatest service to the world is just painting shit. Like, it doesn't have to look a particular way. Not everyone needs to be feeding starving children. It's great to do it, but if you're doing it in fear, if you're doing it because you think that makes you a good person, and really your light is dim, then it's just creating that prophecy in yourself. It's like, well, I'm doing God's work, but no one else is, and the world's I'm not gonna be happy, and I'm not gonna be able to stop until the world changes. I'm gonna have to, there's a huge thing about being a wounded healer. A lot of other psychologists were so burnt out, myself included. I was almost falling asleep in sessions. And it's like, well, this is what you gotta do. You just gotta see 20 traumatized people a day, and that's how you do it. It's how you make a living. But there are other possibilities. There are other ways to get free. We just have to consider the possibility, the fear mechanism that is driving us to one possible reality, and see if there's more. See if there are other realms for us. And that's what makes the change. That's really what allows everyone to start to get free. Freedom is one of my highest values. It's not necessarily everyone else's. Others might be pursuing some other variation of their light. But that's me. For me, it's about getting as free as possible and inviting people to do the same, to see that they have that power. Because through that power, we get to discover our own light. We get to discover what is possible. And we can truly hold this vibration. It is not digging our head in the sand. And the reason it's not digging our head in the sand, even if I don't necessarily want to read every kind of news every day, but the reason it's not digging our head in the sand is because we still work with our own fear. We still have to work with our own fear. Like, I'm not escaping my own fear. I couldn't if I try. I did try. It didn't go so well. There were lots of substances involved. And so that's why people can say, you're not reading enough about what's going on here. You're not involved in this kind of thing. So you just, yeah, but they're just, it's just a reflection of our own fear. So there's no digging your head in the sand from your own fear. And if you're willing to work with that, if you're willing to get free, then you're willing to show up clear-eyed, and you can be with the suffering of the world. It doesn't mean you have to place yourself there every day. You can feel free enough to live, to cultivate a home that lights you up, and that's the future, is communities of light. Communities of light, even while some of the world burns or some of the world plays out that density and that darkness. Communities of light, not as an escape, but to be the change, right? Like Gandhi said, to hold the light and to be of service, to be of the highest vibration of service. And for those of us that are closer to the crux of transmuting darkness into light, which is really what this planet is about, we can be there. We can sort of cross the line and be, for those who are ready to no longer be stuck in that survival programming, they can be the transmuters. They can be the most powerful agents of change who begin to come into the light. But those who want to stay in the light, stay in the light. It's great. You know, stay in the light. Be your light. It's not. That's the freedom, and that's the beauty of where we are going, or where we can go. Is you really can just be in your light, if you have the privilege to do so. But the truth is that many do have the privilege. They just don't take advantage of it because they don't feel good enough doing it. They don't feel it's morally right, or whatever other, frankly, fear-based reason they come up with. They don't want to be their fullest expression of light, because if they actually got permission to do it, it would scare the hell out of them. They wouldn't feel worthy enough. They'd be like, what? I'm actually supposed to do that? I don't know. I'm scared. I don't know. But that's how we break free. That's how we work with the fear. That's how we be the transmuters. That's how we create what I feel and I see and I know is this future. This future of health, of feeling good in our bodies and free in our minds to create. I have no idea how long that was.
It's 150.
Okay. Maybe we'll pause here. I know you had a question.
Where?
Okay, let me say something about that. Yes, our beliefs create our reality. But there's also this thing that happens in some of the spirituality I engage with around like manifestation and law of attraction. It's like, well, you have to see the brightest future, otherwise you're just going to be living in fear and manifesting how poor you are and everything. But there's this, I'm very sensitive to self-blame and self-punishment. Mm-hmm. Because again, like, we have fear, and like, we are meant to be with these shadows, and I get visions too, and you know, it is true that the visions will just resonate with the frequency that we're at. So I do have visions of things burning and maybe continuing to for a while. What I also have a vision of is the light. I also have a vision of communities of light that can hold the vibration while things stay messy for just a little bit. Because, and I just honor the experience in me. I don't expect anyone to believe that. You know, it's a little different when you have visions and then you go around telling everyone exactly what the vision is going to be. Mm-hmm. Kind of like I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. But it's an invitation for all of you. Have the vision you want. My intention is just to create a possibility of a vision you might want to live in. Mm-hmm. But when we go to blame and say, well, the fires were because these people had visions, you know, I'm just very sensitive to the punishment, because on some level, collectively, there are so many really dense, low frequency beliefs, let's just say. So frankly, the only way to continue transmuting that is for things to continue burning for a little bit. Because if the Savior came down, in whatever that means to you, Christ, Allah, whatever, and it was heaven on earth, the people who aren't ready to experience that are not going to experience that. They're going to be like, oh, alien? Cool. Anyway, Fox News, not to politicize. But whatever you like. CNN, whatever. Literally, I really do feel there is, in the next few years, is going to be greater and greater evidence of first contact with ET beings. And those who want to be open to that and either celebrate that or recognize that, you know, many of them are here to support us and you know, those who want to, again, engage in the fear of it, oh, well, we're going to be destroyed, we're going to be blah, 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 blah. If they wanted to destroy us, they probably would have done it already. But it's just another thing. It's just another thing to deny or to say it's fake or to say, no, I'm more comfortable. So on that level, it's true that we are manifesting our reality. It's also true that many of us do kind of still have to manifest and see the shadows and the negativity and the fires. We need to see it because we need to work with our fear. No one is really coming to absolve us of the fear. When we're ready, we will expand and hold the light, but we will do so alongside the fires that may continue to need to burn for a little bit. And I do hear you in that when there is that strong rootedness in a particular cultural faith that has a very strong collective belief about what is coming, that, that's going to be the reality that you choose to live in. And it's tough when it's family, it's tough when it's your own family, it's tough when it's your own culture. I would say the invitation for me is to hold the light, because when we try to go in and get them all to change and be like, that's all bullshit, it's not gonna happen. They don't, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it's not necessarily bullshit because it's true for them. So like, it's not that it's not real, it's just that we are invited to hold a different reality and to actually acknowledge that there is, rather than us like fighting to, if you need to go.
Yeah, because I have to be in West LA at 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Go ahead, my man.
You got 4 minutes.
I know.
See you, Luke.
Teleport.
Yes.
See you.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, you too. I'll just say this and then anyone else. But there is this thing about like fighting for one reality. Like, we're just gonna keep fighting, and the news station's like, this is true, this is true, this is fake, this is fake, this is fake. Consider the possibility that there just are multiple realities, that there are multiple possibilities dictated by different belief systems. And there are what I would call to be more universal truths, but that's frankly only true for me. It's true with other people who I align with, but like, I'm not convincing them to see it. They're not convincing me to see it. That's what I mean by these communities of light, where we're freely aligning with beliefs that we choose to hold. And there are more expansive beliefs and there are more constricting beliefs. But rather than fighting out this game of like, well, this is why social media is so bad, is because everyone's like, yapping about their opinion and it's not true. Well, yours isn't necessarily true either. Just consider that like everyone is actually free to play out their own beliefs and their own truth. And we actually don't have to worry so much about trying to get everyone else to change their mind to see it the way we see it. I mean, mostly the way many of us see it includes a lot of fear too, so that's not even necessarily the highest expression. It's actually a path of much less resistance to allow everyone to play out the beliefs. If there's a lot of people on this planet who really are expecting the end of the world, blessings. You can have that belief and maybe have that truth. It's not mine, so I'm not going to hold it. And there's a lot of freedom in allowing yourself to hold more expansive truths and beliefs, not feeling the need to necessarily defend or argue or convince anyone else of seeing it your way. And that does get messy at like Thanksgiving or whatever, but like it's a practice of like, okay, I hear you, Dad. Yeah. I have a slightly different reality, and that's okay too. And there's just a way we can learn to not have to go on Twitter and like because it doesn't do anything for us. We feel terrible. The other person feels terrible. No one's like how many people are really convincing anyone of anything right now? I don't think anyone is convincing anyone of anything. Everyone's just going on, playing out their own beliefs and like shouting about it and then just recoiling. So it's like, just let them believe what they want, but you believe what you want. It doesn't mean that you just believe things that aren't true for you, but you allow yourself to discover what could be true for you, what resonates with your nervous system, the intuition in your gut, in the physical body, because what feels good to you is going to be different than what feels good to others, and that's going to guide you true in your own healing journey. You're not going to need the same kinds of healing modalities. You're not going to need the same kinds of food. Food is a huge one. You need to be eating literally only meat, or you need to be eating, only vegetables. Like, discover your own truth and just recognize where the fear is for you, so you can get free in the beliefs. And other people really can play out and project out and experience their own reality. It's not necessarily like blame one group of people for a disaster, because there's much larger belief systems at play than just yours, that are manifesting lots of things on the planet that may need to continue to play out. But we can start to get free. We can start to expand our belief system, and that will change our life, and it will be the highest service to the collective. So let me just say a couple things about that. Because I can say, or someone can say, only what you're available for, which is true on one level. But it's similar to what I was saying before, which is that what starts to happen is the ego starts to creep in, not like the grandiose ego, but the really fearful ego, and say, well, then I can't be around any negative energy. I cannot even look at a homeless person because it's going to bring my frequency down, and I'm just going to start to attract different things I don't want. And, we can sage our entire apartment and be like, I'm not available for anything. But there's the thing is, we're always going to be available for our own fear. You can't sage away your own fear. So what I would say is, yes, while it's true that you'll only get what you're available for, that's not meant to instill fear. It's actually meant to instill power, because therefore, whatever you do get pulled into, practice seeing it as a medicine, because you're getting pulled into it because there's a part of you that needs to experience that to get freer of the fear. We get freer of the fear by getting pulled into reenactments, by getting pulled into trauma circumstances. And what I mean by reenactments is, yes, that is playing out, but it's also playing out something else inside. Getting pulled in is playing out a trauma dynamic within you from being a child, from whenever. So we get pulled into reenactments, we get pulled into that. We can say, this is the thing about manifestation, like, I'm gonna manifest the greatest romantic partner. I'm no longer manifesting anyone that makes me feel shame, or Well, if you still need to work through that, you're either gonna work through it alone or you're gonna work through it with a partner. Like, you're not just gonna manifest something that's gonna be so out of alignment with the work we need to do, because we're here to change and grow. So I find an easier way to manage that is to say, we can practice saying, only love lives here, only love lives here. But if fear needs to arise, if whatever needs to arise for my expansion, I allow it. I will allow myself to get pulled in if I need to grow through that for my own benefit and the benefit of my son. It can release some of the fear of that happening, because we can trust that if it happens, there's a medicine there for us.
Easier, yeah.
So here's what I'll say. Give it a try if you'd like. Let me know how it works for you. Hasn't worked out super well yet for anyone I know, including myself. And let me address what you said first. I am not saying that the fear never goes away. I am saying that it, in regard to lineage, it comes from somewhere. There's, we have all this family. We get triggered as many times as we need. That is not in infinity. That is for as many times as we need to get free. There really is an end goal. And actually, the more you allow those triggers in when they happen, because we can't control them. We can't. You can be estranged from your family, but Spirit's gonna find another way, You can't just banish the people who are reflecting your fear. The more we welcome it in, it's a funny thing. Those emotions, they're banging on the door. They just want to be invited in to sit at the dinner table. But the most amazing thing happens is when you allow them to come in and say, like, all right, you're here. What do you want? Like, oh, I'm good. I just wanted to be part of the thing. It's sort of like be at the table with you. Like, I'm a part of you. And, it's not necessarily 90 seconds. It's not even necessarily 90 days, but like, it does go. It does go. And you get reinforced. If you didn't get reinforced, like, why the hell would you keep doing it? But you get reinforced because you get freer. The baseline gets higher. There's opportunity for more joy, more bliss. Like some perspectives, sort of like non-duality spirituality or Buddhism, that recognizes this higher plane of consciousness is like, no, there's no better or worse. It's all, it's just an awareness of being. Except if it's not. Except if you're playing out the personality. There's way better and there's way less good. And so like, that's actually how our navigational system is guided. It's really about go toward what feels good. Like we are all entitled to live a life that feels good. And I have the highest possibilities for a life of pure eternal bliss. I am not mincing words. Pure eternal bliss. Okay? But I also recognize that it's a surrender experiment. It comes through acknowledging the fear and the trauma because I'm not outrunning it. So I do believe I and we are headed somewhere awesome with no fear. It's just that the way we get there is through the fear. It's amazing because there was something, you could give it many names, inspiring, exciting, expansive, guiding, that got you to do it. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't, the whole endeavor wasn't driven by fear. Otherwise, that would be an invitation to look at why we did that in the first place. Mm-hmm. But something was guiding you forth, and as a result, Spirit gave you all the fear that you're meant to transmute so you can have that vision. Right. That's really what manifestation is. Manifestation is having the vision and going for it, and then getting all the stuff you need to transmute so you can be available for it inside. Mm-hmm. So you needed it to go all those ways. So you could learn all the lessons. And so it can really be this beautiful thing. It really can be the vision of your dreams. And you said one thing, which is you said, I'm giving myself permission to see this as a lesson, to see this as a message. That's like the whole thing. Like if we give ourselves permission to say this is happening for me, right? We hear that, this is divinely orchestrated. Say it however you want, but practice seeing it as a medicine. It relaxes the nervous system. We're okay, this is happening. We get confused and we feel paralyzed because we're I don't know what to do. But the one thing we do is welcome in the feelings of it, the fear, whatever it is. And if we can just welcome that in, just possibilities do open. And it can look magical. Sometimes the perfect contractor comes in or the perfect amount of money, but it again, it only comes in if we're like willing, typically I should say, if we're willing to be with whatever the fear is of it not, like, I'll give an example. Like, I've been doing workshops like for a little while, and when I started, I had this doctorate, I had this license that I wasn't even sure if I was going to use, and I was used to doing presentations and stuff. But once I started doing this, not the same amount of people wanted to show up to whatever it is the hell I was going to talk about. And my deepest fear was like, what if no one comes? What if no one comes? So what happened? I started doing workshops, and sometimes no one came. And I could say, oh my God, I'm manifesting like my worst vision, blah, 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 blah. And like, oh, how do I manifest more people to come? How do I, it's being okay with no one coming. That's what the worst fear, okay. I've literally given presentations to no one. Like, it was like virtually, like no one showed up. I was like, all right, I'm doing this for spirit. And I would just do it. And there's something that happens when you do that. You get free. You get free of that fear of like, what if no one comes? If no one comes, that was meant for me. That was meant for me. Thank you, Spirit. I needed to learn from that experience and all my ego about fame and abundance and blah, blah, blah. Like, let it go, because what we really want is just to be free of that fear, because love is there and it's amazing, and we can actually start to love the process and the journey. And it doesn't mean that all life circumstances turn away immediately, because things are a little bit delayed in the physical sometimes. But if we're aligned with it and we're trusting, like, it really does produce the seeds of that vision. And I find that to be probably the most powerful shift in my belief system that has made life a lot easier to navigate and a lot more fun. If we practice considering, there is always a light-filled version to every story. So we create meaning out of our lives. Like, that's what we do. That's what our brains do. We go out, we create meaning. We say good, we say bad. It's a lot of what you guys are just sharing. And that's the thing about language. Like, it's limited. We could say it's good, we could say it's not good, we could say all kinds of things. And we could come up with a really convincing story for any one of those things. We also live in this, what I would call this dimension that is based in polarity. So we see it, we feel separate. We could say it's allness, but we feel separate. We could say it's all good, we could say it's all bad. And we're really good at coming up with stories. Like, that's why there's an infinite amount of Netflix dramas, because we can play out the same beliefs and emotions in any given thing. And no one deserves the suffering. No one deserves to lose a child. It's painful, deeply, deeply painful. And if we are willing, we can practice holding a light-filled version of the story. Only if it's true for you. If it's not, you don't have to believe it. You don't have to force yourself to see it any other way. You don't have to make believe. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to sugarcoat. What I will say is, some people go around saying, I'm a realist. Well, what based on what? What reality? Their version. That doesn't make it real. It's just their version. When we suffer a deep, deep trauma, losing a child is about as rough as it can get. There's gonna be a pretty strong story there, and we're gonna, like, we can try to escape the feelings, we can do whatever, it's gonna suck. It's probably gonna suck. But if we practice considering that there is still this level of our meaning making happening, and that we don't even know all of what's possible. Like, what if, this doesn't have to be your truth, what if when it's our time to transition, we find our daughter's soul and she says, Mom, I had to go to invite in this level of grief, this level of expansion, this level of this. Now that's just a story, right? But could it be also be a possibility? Could the deep traumas in our life, as sucky as they may be, also invite us in for the deepest growth, the deepest love, which may ultimately be the highest prize, the highest thing. That's, for me, that's my highest prize. So when you say that you're a fixer, that you can't fix it, I'll be really sort of dramatic with my language and say, yes, you can. You sure as hell can fix it, and everything works out. Every single thing works out, and you can fix it. You're gonna be like, well, kids are getting murdered, abused, sex slaves, everything. You're right. But again, what works out? What am I saying works out, and what can I fix? No, I can't fix all that. But you started out by saying, well, you welcome in the fear, but you can't fix the problem. I'm telling you, the fear is the problem. I'm telling you, that's what we fix. We fix the fear. Because if we didn't have fear, can you even imagine a reality in which you don't have fear? It's hard for many of us to imagine because we're like, no, but these things are still bad. Why are they bad? If we really didn't have fear, would they be? Maybe we'd still have to go through the emotions. Maybe we'd still feel grief, feel loss. But if there's no fear, there's not necessarily a problem. We have strong attack. When you watch a really convincing drama on Netflix or whatever, you know, it's really sad or whatever, but it could change the music and it could be a comedy. Like, they're the same themes, it's the same story. We know how to manipulate our emotions. You go see a movie and it makes you feel a certain way. It doesn't actually make you feel a certain way, it just elicits a feeling that's already within you. That's the power of story. But we can choose another story if we want. Now, for some of us, the trauma is so painful, we don't want to choose another story. We don't want to see it as a blessing. We don't want it because it almost feels wrong. It's like, I don't want to see that as good, but actually there is a belief, there is a possibility that the souls that are lost are truly in a better place now. And let me just say, this is not as good as it gets, this place here. There are better places, trust me. And that all that they're wanting is for us to let go, is for us to come into love, to come into forgiveness, to come into allowance. It doesn't make those things right, it doesn't make them wrong. That's based in polarity. It doesn't really, you know, the idea that we have to choose a side, you have to choose a team, you have to choose a politic. There is a way to fix it. What we fix is not the story. We fix the feelings, but it's not the fixing that you're used to. You know, you're probably, you know, maybe you're a good engineer, maybe you can fix a toilet, maybe, you know, that's
Can you?
I don't know if you can. Okay, not to project that onto you. I can't, so I kind of wish I could, frankly. It's not that kind of fixing. It's a fixing that comes through a much different muscle. A muscle that, particularly, not to project again, but us in the masculine identity, we don't get conditioned. You know, our conditioning is like, yeah, you fix it with tools, and it's like force and power. There's a different kind of fixing. There's a fixing that comes through surrender. It feels counterintuitive. It feels weak. It challenges all of the stereotypes of who we think we are, but it fixes it. Oh, it fixes it because it opens up we're in this movie theater and it was like, oh my God, there's a million theaters. I just choose a different theater, and all of a sudden I didn't need to do anything about this story. I'm just living in a different one. It's a much different, so with your partner, when she's attempting to process, how could a God do this? How could a God do this? You can attempt to answer it if that feels aligned for you. Or you can just practice holding the line. You can practice saying, I don't know, dear. I don't know, but I choose this story. I choose love. I choose, I can acknowledge the suffering. I can acknowledge that it's so painful. I don't have the answer to your questions and I cannot convince you, but I choose this experience. And just by you choosing the story that you want to be available for and that you want to practice trusting, that's the invitation for her to join you, if she wants. Or she can keep playing that out and sort of coming to her own conclusions about it. But we don't fix anyone else's story. We can only practice letting go of our own. And, you know, we're going to have a story. We're typically not going to be storyless, but there are so many better stories typically than the ones that we hold. So many better TV shows out there than the ones that we choose to watch. You know, it's just about, you know, but again, we meet ourselves where we're at. It's like, man, this is the story I got right now. It kind of sucks, but I'd like, but it's like, okay, I could consider maybe there's a different one. I'd like a different one, but this one's here now. So I'll just practice being with that, because the feelings are the feelings, and we just, yeah, we welcome them home. But what I will say is, from that process, a lot of times the story does change. A lot of times the circumstance does change. Maybe not right away, but when we practice holding the light through, you know, the very deep, like, traumatic thing that's playing out, you know, things will continue, like, people will continue to die. Like, there are things that are going to keep happening for sure. But other things can change. Like, we can open up to different kind of love. New people can come into our life that weren't allowed to come in before. Like, circumstances can change. Like, different things can happen. New jobs can become available. New abundance, new people, new family, new community. Like, when we start to open up to that, like, different things really can happen. We don't necessarily get attached to it or like, I can't wait for that thing to happen, because then we're kind of in this place of resistance and holding. But I will just speak for myself. Like, I was in pain for a really long time and I was not ever sure I was getting out. And I am not in that pain anymore. So, you know, there were many days, nights, years that I was just fearfully wondering if I could ever have a family, if I could ever do this, if I could ever do that. And I legitimately wasn't sure. But through a series of invitations, I slowly, percentage-wise, started to consider the possibility that I wouldn't be riddled with pain. And it's really, you can't really fake it till you make it kind of thing. It's more like through subtle invitations, you get mirrored back to you, like, oh, that was a week of a different experience, or that was like, and then what often happens is it's ebb and flow. Like, I work with people in pain and they'll be out of pain for like a little while, and then they'll be like, the pain's back again. And immediately everyone does the same thing. I've regressed, or I've like, you know, I'm in fear again, or maybe it really is a medical thing. Chances are most of your pain is not structural, but it's another conversation. But all the fears come back. But what I'll say is, that's not any kind of regression. It's just what I was saying to Rev Scott. It's you can choose to see it as a regression, or you went backward. It is no going backward. The universe only progresses. What it is it's another invitation for you to revisit what's remaining in the fear and beliefs there. Because if when we go back and revisit the pain, if it triggers all those fears again, or, oh, I'm back in pain, that's terrible. there's medicine there for us once again to practice holding the light. So when we come out of that, we slingshot that much further into the light. And at this point, I just don't really need to experience a lot of that stuff again. Now, if I invited to, I will. Like, I'm not afraid of it, but my experience is qualitatively different than it was before. So it can change. There's a story that I'm unfolding that you are all invited to subscribe to if you like, which is that every single thing that happens on this planet is an invitation for you to welcome home your fear. And if you start to see every single thing that happens on this planet as an invitation to welcome home your fear, you will not fear the things that happen on this planet. You will not wish them to be different. You can have your preference, understandably. I sure as hell have mine. But if we truly practice seeing it as a medicine, and the fear itself, that's a powerful story. It's a really powerful story because you can just feel the body be like, oh, I don't have to fear the presence of fear. I don't have to fear like what's gonna happen when I go outside if I practice seeing that it's a medicine. It doesn't mean you be careless and you don't, take care of yourself and use your common sense and all that stuff. Like, you don't have to throw yourself off a cliff unless that's really exciting for you and you want to cliff dive and whatever, and do it. But it just means that we can practice being okay with what happens, not just as some game, like, well, it's better than thinking that it sucks. Well, it is, but actually considering, like, maybe there really is a gift in this. Maybe there really is. And I have all sorts of fanciful stories about what's happening on the planet and why and all that stuff, but, I hold them loosely. Like, for me, like, I don't hold so tightly to anything I just said to you. Like, I don't even know, I remember most of it, and a lot of it I like write about and stuff, but like, if it turns out to be different, that's okay. I'm not like super subscribed to it happening exactly the way I see it, but it is a practice in like, what happens when we consider a different story? Just like consider, and one story that has like worked pretty well for me thus far, through experience, is that when I welcome in the fear and trust that things that happen to me are medicine, my life gets like infinitely better. Like, it keeps getting better and better, and I actually have less and less fear. So, you get to choose. You get to choose what story you want to practice holding in every moment. And you're just invited to keep playing with that. Like, this is happening. What story could I subscribe to? Like, what would be a good story for this? See, I'm very functional as a person. Like, what would make me feel good? Here's the thing. You can handle it, and your mother could handle it too.
Yes.
But it's okay to be afraid.
Oh, it hurt.
It's okay to be afraid. We are afraid. Our bodies are afraid. They feel fear. So we can practice being really strong and not complain, right?
Yes.
Never gonna complain. But we're afraid. We are afraid. And sometimes what happens is we're invited to be with it. So it's amazing to be fearless. It's amazing. But it's okay to be afraid too. It's okay if the fear is there. And I wonder if you actually practice welcoming in the fear.
Welcome in.
Yeah, the fear. You might be like, what do you mean? I don't know. Just invite it. Invite it in. See what happens. See if something shows up. Because my sense is that for you, it might actually be easier to have the pain than to have the fear. Sometimes, as painful as the head is, fear is worse. We'd rather be fearless. We'd rather be fearless and in pain than painless and in fear.
Painless.
So it's actually my invitation to you to be like, if fear is here, it's okay. It's okay. I know my mother never wanted to have it, and she prayed it, and never complained, but it's okay. I'll be afraid. I'll be afraid if I need to, and just see what happens. You don't have to fake it. If there's no fear, great. But it would be my invitation for you to see if there is fear. Maybe if you allow it in, and you're like, yeah, I've been fearless. It's great, but maybe I'll practice allowing in some fear and see what happens. See if something changes in the headspace, and you might consider energy healing, because what that does is it goes in there energetically and it cleans the blockage, and then usually the feelings will show up. Whatever is meant to heal will do so when we allow it in.